Good morning, friends. We are gathered here today for another episode of Coffee with Friends, and I'd like to, before we begin, give you this disclaimer. As always, Coffee with Friends may discuss trauma of all sorts to include all types of abuse. Viewers and listeners may find it unsettling and triggering. The guests on our live streams reflect a diverse set of values, morals, and ethics that may not reflect the morals, values, and ethics of the misfit Amish. If this live stream upsets you and causes you distress, please seek support from your trusted folks and qualified mental health professionals as needed. And as always, you may cease listening until you're able to listen again. With that being said, I'd like to welcome Lizzie. Lizzie comes from the UK. Good morning, Lizzie. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And I'm I suppose you could say I suffer from, but I don't. It's a condition. It's not an illness. Cerebral palsy.
So, would you say you live with
Yes.
cerebral palsy? Kind of
Yes.
like how I live with CPTSD?
Yeah. But I
Okay.
know there are other things that go with it as well that
Mhm.
you wouldn't necessarily think of. So you'll get exhaustion. So you could be fatigued. You'll also have with my one, I have two different types of cerebral palsy. So I have ataxic, which means that you have tight muscle tone. So they're not straight. Your legs don't straighten out properly, or your arms don't straighten out properly. It could be anything like that. It could be your toes, it could be your fingers, anything. And I also have spastic form, which means that you spasm.
That doesn't sound very fun
No,
at all.
no.
So is this like an acquired condition caused by something, or is it a genetic condition?
It's actually, well, there's various reasons ways it can be done. It's negligence from the doctors during the birth of the child to the child. It can be nothing, just something happens. Could even be a stroke when the mother's pregnant with the child, so the child can have it from the stroke that it's had in its mother's womb. It can be an accident when the child is not old, but it's the starvation of oxygen to the cerebellum in the brain, which is the situation. So it's similar to a stroke in the form of some of the problems, but not all. And therefore it comes across as we can be walking like we're drunk. If we are walking, if we're able to walk, if we're not, we're not. We're in a wheelchair or whatever. So it's like that as well. And others can't even speak. So that's, again, similar to another one, which is lockdown syndrome.
So it can have varying effects, right?
Yeah.
And it is kind of on a spectrum
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
how much it
Yeah.
impacts
Yeah.
your ability to function.
Mm-hmm. Because it takes 3 times as much energy for anything to be done for us, for the people with this condition. There is roughly about 15 million, 18 million, maybe even more, in the world completely. So it's one of the 4 biggest conditions that is known about, but it is not talked about enough.
So, why do you think it's important to discuss the lived experiences of cerebral palsy?
Because it gives the people who don't experience it the knowledge, the understanding that they need for people who have the condition. Even doctors don't know everything about the condition, and it's still perceived as a child's condition, when in actual fact it's a lifelong condition.
Are you saying that people Um, People believe that this condition is only active while you're a child.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Like that's kind of insane a little,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
because in my understanding, cerebral palsy has always been a chronic condition. It's not like it just goes away, you
No.
know?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't go away. I've also had people say, "Is it contagious?"
So, like, people are afraid of you
Yeah.
because, like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god, if I
Mm.
talk to that person," and
Yeah.
that's really how does that feel when you experience that?
Horrible. But I've had it for so long now that I sort of ignore it. I laugh it off, even though actually, really, no, it annoys me because there's so much ignorance for the world in the world of any condition, not just cerebral palsy, but I use my condition as my voice to talk about other conditions as well, to help them so that everyone else has got an equality form as well.
You know, it reminds me of, like, the way that sometimes people look at being different as less than.
Mm-hmm.
If you're autistic,
Yes.
which I was diagnosed several
Yeah.
years ago as
Yeah.
autistic,
Yeah.
and when you're autistic, there's people who look at me and they say, "Well, you host a podcast, so you couldn't possibly be autistic." There's people who look at me and say, "Well, you hold a job, so you couldn't be autistic."
Yeah.
There's
Exactly. This is where
this
we have
is
the same issues.
it's like this thing of, like, there's people who say, "Well, you know, it's if you can hold a job, you're not really autistic, if you know what I
And you're
mean."
not really disabled
Uh, but
in
are
in that
they
in
the ones?
yeah. They're
Are
the ones
they the
that
ones who
yeah,
live
yeah,
with the functional effects,
yeah,
the executive functioning
yeah. They
dysfunction
don't
that I
realise
have
what they're
from
actually
being
what they're
autistic?
saying. They don't know. They don't understand the condition. I literally it was just before COVID. I'd gone into the gym to do some exercise, do a dance class actually, and an elderly woman said, "Is it contagious?" As I
Oh my
said,
god.
I was like, "No, I was born with it."
It's just unbelievable the
Hmm.
amount of misinformation,
Hmm.
and the other part is that you know that being different doesn't make you any less than.
No, but that's what I want to. That's what I want to show as well. It doesn't mean that we're any different to anybody else.
Mhm.
I mean, I've written, as I said, I didn't quite say to you at the beginning, I've actually written 3 poetry books as well regarding cerebral palsy and depression. So they're on Amazon to get hold of.
Do you have links to them you can send to me in the private
Yes, I will
chat?
do. I will do.
Okay. I'll put them on the videos.
Yeah.
But I love poetry. I think it's an
I mean, it's
amazing.
it's it's fairly simple, but it was cathartic for me because it was getting rid of some of the depression regarding the condition, writing about how I felt with the condition at the time, earlier on in my life. Now I'm nearly half a century old.
Mhm.
You know, I'll go, yeah, whatever. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
But there are still issues that will niggle at me and that will crop up.
So it's like you can't really you don't just get rid of it. You learn to live with it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And it can change year to year, day to day, because and season to season, all of which I've mentioned in my blogs as well, in my blog posts as well, early on about it. I'm slightly pivoting in my blog with what I like being and how certain things have made me grow as a person with the condition. But early in my posts, I've been talking about what types of cerebral palsy there are, because there's actually 4 main types. There are, there's lots of little snippets. They're not in depth because I'm not there to give all the medical jargon. I'm there as a support group bouncer to say, okay, so this is what I've got, or someone else I know has got this, and they can learn a bit from me and then go on to someone else who will give you better jargon if they want to know the better jargon than I have for it. Because I'm no doctor.
Because sometimes the way that we talk about what we live with varies greatly from the way that medical professionals understand and communicate, because it's almost like there's a separate language. That's why when you start going in the medical field, you have to take actual classes on medical terminology.
Yes. I mean, I know the basics. Like, for example, I know most bone structure for myself, and I know that also with the cerebral palsy, because of the amount of wear and tear, because of the amount of energy used, that actually my bones and my muscles wear quicker. So my skeletal changes will be quicker. So, for example, if as I said, I'm nearly 50, so my bone structure and my muscle structure could be someone who's 70, 80 years old, not someone who's my age, because of the amount of energy I've used up over time.
So that's a thing that seems like it can really affect your quality of life.
Yeah, it can. I mean, there are so many people who have it and have achieved amazing things. I'm going to give you an American comedian, Mason Zayad. She has it. She has cerebral palsy. She and I follow each other on Twitter. And Instagram. I follow her as well. And she, that's someone who's got it. Who also RJ Mitty, who's in Breaking Bad. He's got it. So you got to think, okay, that's 2 different people on your side of the world who are famous who have it. There is also, I don't know the child's name and I don't know the actor's name for it, but it's in 911, the American series, and there's the child is called Christopher in the series, and he has cerebral palsy. So it's been recognised slowly, but it's not being recognised enough. The same with any condition, I think.
There need to be better conversations about medical conditions, especially the ones that are lifelong, so that we understand better how to manage it. And some of the differences, like, it's really, what I'm hearing says to me that you're able to sometimes, like, depending on where you fall on the spectrum, right? Regardless, like, you're allowed to have a healthy, like, happy, full life. It's just difficult, and it has challenges that not everybody might experience.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're different in that way because sometimes we need support and resources that other people don't need to accomplish tasks in life or goals in life.
That's right.
But it also doesn't mean that you're any less capable of making decisions about your life.
No.
And I think
that's been another thing that's come up before. You're disabled, you're an idiot.
And people tell you where to go, what to do,
Mhm.
who to talk to.
Mm.
Quite frankly, it's infantilizing.
Yeah. I mean, I can say, okay, have you heard of boccia before?
I haven't.
Right. Okay. Now, I know one of the people I speak to quite often, he's actually kind of a mentor of mine, actually, is actually David Smith, who happens to be Great Britain's #1 Paralympian for boccia. So so you can say, okay,
Okay.
yeah, you don't need to be. It can prove he's in a wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just something that you wouldn't expect someone like that. And I'm saying that blindly, as if to say, "Oh no, can't be that. You can't do that. You're in a wheelchair." But actually, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've also got the wheelchair sprinter, Hannah Cockcroft,
Mm-hmm.
Paralympian. She's got cerebral palsy too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's two sportsmen, sports people,
Sports people.
yeah, who have cerebral palsy. In the UK, we have a number of two comedians again, Rosie Jones, who speaks differently
Mm-hmm.
because and she walks funny, like I do, because of her
Mm-hmm.
cerebral palsy. So when she's tired, she's in a wheelchair or on an electrical scooter, depending on
Mm-hmm.
what she's doing. But when she's on stage, she's walking, she's talking.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I can't remember this guy's surname, but he's called the Lost Voice guy. And he's actually a comedian. He's got cerebral palsy and he uses the talk machine that Stephen Hawking used.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go again. You've got someone who, okay, that's ALS for you guys, but over here it's motor neurone disease.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in a wheelchair, and yet he was a professor
Mm-hmm.
and a doctor of whatever science that was he was doing. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's a different disability altogether. And right up until the end, he was doing what he loved the most.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I want to prove. I would like that the world have to see this more of equality, and yet there isn't enough
Yeah.
anywhere. And it doesn't matter what color you are, what race, religion, whatever. It can happen to you.
There's no boundaries.
No, absolutely not.
So, what is the single biggest barrier that you have experienced, or is there a single biggest barrier that you've experienced?
Oh, that's a complicated question because I was taught by my parents there's no such word as can't.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get around things, yeah, sure. But you can always do it. As long as there's a way, there's always a will, there's a way.
Okay.
So I endeavour to do as much as possible to fulfill my life. So talking to you actually is one of those dreams that are helpful for me because it's bringing more conversation out for cerebral palsy. So
Well, that's wonderful.
yeah, but I'm not sure the figures in America, but it's 1 in 4 children in the UK alone have it.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That is a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. That's in the UK alone, and that's just the children. And there's roughly and there's 60 million roughly about in the country. I'm not sure of the figures directly. So if you think 1 in 4 and how many are adult, there's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And it's still hidden.
Mm-hmm.
It's still hidden. Because in the past, we were put away into homes, into nursing homes. We were to be shunned. And it would be the same in America. Any disabled person would have been put into a home, a nursing home, or some kind of home where they were supposedly looked after or weren't looked after.
Because you were to be hidden.
We were different.
Well, that's not okay.
No, it's not.
We do have a comment. I'll just read it to you.
Okay.
I have somebody, Marlene says, 2 of my twin cousins in the Pike Mennonite or Simbuggy Mennonites have cerebral palsy. They are my age, so we grew up playing together. It seems as if the family expected them to do all things, as they are both still working, but neither married. I'm curious as to what the speaker thinks I should ask them the next time I'm with them. If you have thoughts.
Okay. I was very lucky to meet my husband, who happens to be able-bodied, but he has dyslexia. So he's different. In that respect, we have children who are quite normal, as they would say in England, quite normal, able-bodied. Out of the 2 of them, my daughter was born with telepes, which is like clubfoot in America, and her feet were turned in because she was at the bottom of the 2. And so we worked very hard on her using the same methods that I was taught as a child to do with physiotherapy for her feet.
Mm-hmm.
And she has, slightly weak ankles, but you can get weak ankles anyway, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But she's going to college. She's got a job as well. No, they're teenagers starting their own careers as such, And so she's other than that one major issue when she was born, she's fine.
So basically, to be clear, like what you were talking about club feet and working and doing all of that, physiotherapy, all of that, people can get weak ankles. People can get issues within their bodies from various things in their life. Like it can happen. You can acquire conditions.
Yeah.
But just because you experience an injury or you experience a medical condition doesn't mean that you're incapable of living a life after all of that.
No, exactly. And it's the same goes for her, the cousins. They're working. They're doing an amazing job. Remember that. They are doing things that a lot of people wouldn't expect them to do. They'll be stuck in a home, looked after by carers, not able to do anything for themselves, no freedom, nothing, because they wouldn't have been expected to do anything. Whereas their parents had the courage to fight back, teach the children as they were growing up how to do things, get around things on their own, do things on their own, work, do things. Things might be a challenge, but it can be done. And regarding relationships, that's an odd one because it doesn't really matter. You could be gay, straight, whatever, rainbow, whatever. I don't care. But it doesn't matter where you are. You could be lonely or you could have someone. So if you're disabled, it shouldn't matter either way, because it's the person inside the body, as the spirit, should be the one that's more important than, say, the shell of the body.
Who you are matters.
Mm. Yeah.
Who you are matters.
Exactly. Not what you are or what religion, what colour, whatever. For me, that's not the issue.
I think sometimes people get all caught up in like specific, if they can see the physical disability,
Mm-hmm.
people get caught up in that. And I don't think it's necessarily a good thing.
No, it's not. I mean, we have all got ribs, we have all got backbones, we've all got legs, arms. Yes, they might look different, but they are there. We've still got the bones and the muscles. Okay, they might be different too sometimes, depending on what, And if it's an adult, or even now, I'm not sure if it happens still, but if you're born different with, say, with one arm, one leg, or for example, you going into the sea and having a surfing, and you get bitten by a shark and you lose a limb. That's still a difference. That's still a disability,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll get people who will not, who will treat them differently to what they expect as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll even turn people away who have been their friends when they had two legs or two arms, but then turned away when they have one arm, one leg.
That's so messed up.
You'll find that in any disability. And I just want to show that we all have a voice.
Yeah, we do. And like one of our listeners says, Hinda, I have a chronic illness and I work, drive, dated. The first thing I had to do was establish a routine for myself, creating my new normal, what was best for me and my needs. Do you think that is
That
something
is
you also
important.
do?
That is what you have to do. If you don't, you can't function, because you'll be striving to be what everyone else wants you to be, and you can't be you. You can't be true to yourself. And I've learned that the hard way too.
Yeah, many of us have.
Mm.
We learn how to
Yeah.
figure out like how to figure out our life and make it make sense for us. Like
Yeah.
how does this work for us?
Yes. Exactly. So it's important that you stretch things out, that you go, okay, it might be that you can go out once or twice a week, but you can't go out the rest of the week, and you need to do work from home.
Wow.
Or you could do, it could be anything, any way. You have to plan your day routine. People say that on the fly, fine. That's if you're not neurodiverse in any sense. But if you're neurodiverse in any case, with ADHD or whatever condition you've got on top, you can't. You need organisation.
So one of the things that I've frequently experienced is that for me, I work a full-time job
Mm.
and I do what I have to survive.
Yeah,
But
but
when I
don't.
leave that full-time job, I'm pretty much done.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter if it's like a shorter day, a longer day, it does not matter. When I leave that job, I am done.
yeah.
It is not very often that I will find a way to be able to socialize after work.
No,
I
because you're
don't
tired.
have the space. I barely even have the space to eat dinner after I worked all day.
Yeah, you were. I often would say something for that. I would counteract that with by doing something like having a shake as you walk out the door afterward. Say, okay, I'm too knackered to actually cook dinner. Have a shake. Have something prepared ahead of you to do
Mhm.
that. So you could switch it so that if you're having a meal in the morning, a proper full-time meal in the morning, and then your normal lunch at lunchtime, depending on what your routine is, you make your day is your day. It doesn't matter where your 12 o'clock is. So if you're doing a 9 to 5, okay, so you're up at 7 or 6 or whatever, and then
Mhm.
you're going to bed at 12 hours later, 14 hours later, because you've got to space your. There's a way of I'm not sure if the Americans do it. It's called spooning. So you wear.
Oh,
Yes, you can think of it like. But if you've got half a spoonful of sugar to get dressed, a spoonful of sugar to do something else, and
mhm.
that's how you do it. So it'd be a spoonful or half a spoonful. So we nicknamed it spooning. So you know what?
Spoon theory.
Yeah, the spoon theory,
Yeah.
and it's a great way around it. So my levels today haven't been too bad. I've got my 20 spoonfuls of sugar, and I'm probably gone through half today, which isn't too bad.
Well, I'm acquiring my spoons today. The spoons that I have today, they're acquired by the cups of coffee that I drink
Yeah,
usually. That's been my whole life, kind of how I function is the amount
but
of
then if you,
coffee.
as you say, you've got ADHD of forms, and natural
Mhm.
fact, your coffee settles your brain. It's self-medicating it,
Uh-huh.
because so that's how it works. If you're on coffee or Coke or anything like that, that will settle your brain. It calms it down. Whereas if you weren't to drink it, you'd be all over the place.
I feel like the world is ending. That's how it feels.
Mm. If you're not
Like,
organized, and you can't organize yourself when you're not focused, and you can't focus. So I find that I have to have a routine no matter what, and people disrupt it, and it drives me crazy.
you know what my favorite is?
What?
My favorite is the workplace. When you're in the workplace and you have a calendar schedule, and then like you have management who legitimately sits there and one, they send out a meeting invite with like 2 hours to spare to the meeting before they even announce the meeting. Two, they don't even give you a topic of the meeting. Like, hello, can we communicate?
There is
Ca
no yeah. So there is no communication for anybody. You're expected to live off the fly, and you can't do that. No one
Uh-huh.
can really do that, and it
And
doesn't matter being whatever condition.
and when you ask for accommodations, you're told, "Oh, we can't really do that."
Yeah, and
I call
that is
baloney.
really hard. That is so hard.
I call baloney though because you can do that. You can give a meeting topic and you can announce the meeting more than 2 hours prior to the
Yes, you
meeting.
can. Yeah, you
That
can.
is you making stuff
It's
up.
yeah. It's I mean, here in the UK, there are businesses who do not follow the rules regarding the disabled, because they say, "Oh, we know we won't give we." They'll say they will do it, but they won't do it by us of helping that person who needs a particular item to
Mhm,
work. Like someone might need a specific type of chair or a desk
mhm.
or something, and they will say that. Thank you, Regina. I see that. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
you get it. You get it anywhere. But I'm not sure what the American system's like. But over here, it's supposed to be law. It's disability law that companies are meant to accommodate, and many don't.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, I can see that one, Marlene, as well.
Marlene, I'm pretty sure my mind went where yours went,
Yes,
straight
I
to the
can. I can.
gutter.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
everyone went that way too. But no, yeah, it's a common say. It's a common saying, sort of like a spoon. It's like Mary Poppins says, a spoonful of sugar will make this medicine go down. Mary Poppins, a spoonful of
Yeah.
sugar will make the medicine go down.
Yeah, Hinda also said spoon theory. You only have so many spoons each day. You
Yeah,
allocate your activities to how much energy it takes and what you have,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
true. Okay, but that is not what I thought when you said spooning. That is not what I thought. I
No,
confess
I
I'm
know
guilty.
everyone goes down the other way, down the rabbit hole, shall I say? And that's another one. But
Yeah,
that's how you.
yeah.
But that's how you accommodate things. You have to. You have pavement. We have.
Mhm,
You have garbage can. We have dustbin.
mhm,
So okay,
mm. Can we just talk about an English breakfast versus an American breakfast?
yeah.
Alright, tell me what's the typical English breakfast.
Well, if you're going for it depends on what type of English breakfast you want, because there's a couple.
Oh, do tell me about them.
Okay, so you have a porridge. So it's oats made up as porridge. And then you'll have that with milk and sugar or honey or whatever. And you can have a coffee or a tea. And that'll be one breakfast.
Okay.
You can have your tea, your toast, jam, orange juice, tea, coffee, whatever. That'd be another English breakfast. But if you're
Mhm,
going for the full English, which is how it started,
mhm.
would be sausages, bacon, eggs, baked beans, and the eggs might be scrambled or poached or even fried. And then you'd also have tomatoes and mushrooms. And depending on where you are in the country, you may even have black pudding,
Yeah.
which
So
is like it's similar to haggis, but it's a sausage,
mhm.
and that's fried as well. And that's a full fried that's everything is fried.
Yes, yes, it
And
is.
that will be
I will vouch.
that's equivalent, I would say, to your Americans and bacon and maple syrup and your pancakes.
Well, see, when I was in London, I had that with the baked beans and all the things. I didn't have the black pudding, though,
No.
but I had everything else.
Yeah.
And then we had some tea, some proper tea.
Yeah.
Like, that was great.
Yeah.
But typically, like, what I grew up eating for breakfast would be, like, cereal, like, we would cook oatmeal, but we would just say it's oatmeal. We wouldn't call it porridge.
Yeah.
And then we would season it with, like, raisins
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
cinnamon and
Yeah.
spices
Yeah.
and eat
Yeah.
it
You
with
do that here
milk
too.
and yeah,
But that's more of a lot of it's done in Scotland quite a lot, I think.
yeah,
More than it because of how the country was built in a way that they were classed, and I'm saying this horrifically, they were classed more as working class, whereas the people down here where I am were classed as middle class and upper class.
oh my god,
I'm sort of not in the middle, I'm in the southeast of the country.
gotcha,
So we would be classed as the middle class. So
yeah.
we're not royalty, but we're not
You're not
really,
the lowest of
no,
the
we're
low.
not.
You're not
But
at the
whereas I would,
bottom of the
yeah, and that's what I'm
yeah.
saying. And that's how that I perceive how the countries were treated back then, and how technically in politically, and I'm going to say this is going to upset a lot of people, that it's still treated that way.
Uh-huh.
Still is treated like that over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, sadly, far too much of the world has relied on systems that are hierarchical and
Yeah.
even, different classes of people, classifying people's value by how much money they have or, you
Exactly.
know, what type of genetics were you born with? What kind of
Yeah.
family did you come from? Did you come from a good family or did you
Yeah.
come from somebody who,
Yeah.
grew up in the dredges and
Yeah. That's the
survived
thing, isn't it?
things that you can't even fathom happening because it offends your sensibilities to consider it happening?
Yes. And this is where you get the shame of people saying things like, when my husband and I started dating, or dating, going out, whatever. So you're talking nearly 30 years ago now. In my day, people like her would be put away, and that's what this old lady was saying to a friend of hers in the street.
Mhm.
And my husband wanted to turn around, and my husband turned around and said, "What, like you now? She's got she's got A levels, she's got all sorts of stuff you haven't got." She went,
Mhm.
"Ah, ah, ah."
Mm. Going back to that, like, how do we treat people in America with disabilities? So we do have the ADA, Americans with, um, Disabilities Act.
We have the English equivalent.
Yeah. We do have laws about it.
Yeah, but then, as I was saying to you earlier, a lot of the businesses won't accommodate. Even the big ones don't accommodate with seats or things. I mean, I'm not saying who, because I don't know who anymore. I will say that when I was 16, that I was training to be a administrator,
Mhm.
and a very big charity, worldwide charity now, said I was a liability because of my disability.
They told you that?
Yeah.
The actual audacity.
Hmm.
I always want to be surprised, but you know what surprises me most in the world? When people are kind.
Yeah, I get that. I'm
Genuine kindness
Yeah.
surprises me more than it does this. I just feel like it's the human animal is a terrible
I just want to punch people in the face when they say things like that. I just like,
I mean, that is
really?
horrible.
Yeah.
Why would you say that to somebody? Why would you even think it?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So, Hinda says it's getting organizations and businesses to actually follow the ADA here too.
Yeah.
Well, once we have the laws, like people always say, oh, well, if you don't like it, change the laws. Okay, so if we have the laws and you don't enforce the laws, then what's the problem?
Yeah. And that's the other issue, is a lot of people don't enforce them, whether they're within the company. And this is when I will turn around and say, well, this is where disabilities in all forms need to be heard, because we're not heard.
Yeah. Read this comment. My mother in law is a disabilities attorney. So we have to have disabilities attorneys.
Yeah.
And I would love to step into her shoes when I grow up. She is an amazing woman. She's fought insurance companies, federal government, etc. But I just want to point out we have to have disabilities attorneys. Why do we have to have disabilities attorneys?
Because people think that they're not capable of fighting for themselves, and yet you'll have people who are in a wheelchair who are attorneys. in America or solicitors over here.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're still expected to treat them like idiots when they're not.
I think the dehumanization, the infantilization, the assumptions sticks
Yes.
out to me. Because when you start talking about how, like, people automatically assume based on your diagnoses, you're going to meet inside of this box. They have this very
Mm-hmm.
narrow idea of, like, where you're supposed to be.
I
And
mean, I'm going to say that my daughter and I went to go and see Barbie the other week. And before the film, I went to a local cafe area and I needed to go to the loo. But I was in my Motability scooter
Mhm.
because I can't walk far. So
Uh-huh.
so I parked my scooter outside and I did my waddle into the toilet to do my thing. And my daughter got moaned at. Why does she have a mobility scooter when she can walk as well?
Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe it's not your business,
yeah,
and maybe people's private medical information is their own business.
yeah. And that was a
Maybe.
cleaner. That was a cleaner at the complex where the film was being played. And they had also locked the disabled loo. So even with a disabled key, which we call radar keys over here, it was locked. So I couldn't have used a disabled loo in any case.
Again, the dehumanization, oh, well, you don't look like you have the disability I think you should have to access this loo. That's
Yeah,
that's basically it. And for those who don't know, the loo is the bathroom.
yeah.
Um, but even though you have done all the things, you have the key, like, you can't access this because I've decided in
Mm-hmm.
my infinite wisdom that I know more than your doctors, I know more than all of your providers, your medical providers, and I, as a layperson on the street, have
Mm-hmm.
decided you don't deserve resources or access to
And
accommodation.
luckily I could go into a ladies' bathroom, WC, but God forbid it being someone who's in a wheelchair.
I mean, if it was somebody like I have a friend who gets around in a scooter in public sometimes, and if that was her, like, what with her disability that she lives with, like she I think about this sometimes. What makes people so horrible to one another?
I don't know. I think it's the ignorance that they are brought up by and brought up with by the people behind them. And I'm going to say again, with like the ozone layer, we're going to be fighting that condition now, planet wise. But yes, it's also all our faults, but it's also the predecessors' fault as well. Because you think
Mhm.
about it, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, what would we be doing? What were we doing
Mhm.
in countries? Polluting the air. Okay, we didn't know. But
But now we know. Now we
yeah,
can fix
now we
it,
know. Now we should be doing something more about it. And it
and we
goes to
should be
any,
fixing it, right?
yeah, exactly. So
Um,
no matter what the problem is, there should be a way around it or a way to fix it.
well, I do have hinted in the comments talking about, um, they are not to ask the nature of your disability or medical condition. You don't have to explain yourself to them.
My
All
daughter
you
didn't,
have
and
to
neither did
state
I.
is, "I am disabled and I need this accommodation." That's it. So if you're in America, that's to my best understanding, hashtag not a lawyer, not an attorney, but to my best understanding, like, it is not only not their business, but it's also, like, if somebody asks you, you they're not supposed to ask you what your disability is.
No, they're not supposed to either over here. They're not supposed to.
Yeah.
But you still get it. Or they treat you with the ignorance. And
Mhm.
there's
And
a T-shirt that was done decades ago by Anita Roderick when she owned Body Shop, which said, if you think education's expensive, try ignorance. And I thought that was so bloody apt then, and I still
it's
think it now.
it's so on the nose. It's, like, right there.
Yeah,
It's just like, if you think this is
yeah.
yeah, because, like,
And
one of
that
the
was a
things
brilliant T-shirt from Anita Roderick when she was the head
yes.
of Body Shop.
Because one of the things is that, when people fail to understand that what they're doing is actually inherently, like, harmful.
Mm,
And not only is it harmful, now it breaks the law, right? So now it
yeah,
breaks the law, and they're still doing it.
yeah. And you'll get the same thing for a Karen, and I'm going to say the Karen attitude for someone who's got a wheelchair, who's got to have this parking space over here, as you do in America. Unless you can be seen with a disability, you're not entitled to that seat, that space. Yet there are so many hidden disabilities on top of, MS, cerebral palsy, things like that, that can be done. So, for example, you've got a couple, one of who has epilepsy, but their partner doesn't.
We
But
don't
they're
talk about
entitled over
that.
here to have a badge in their car that says yes, they can park in a disabled bay when they're with their partner, and yet they could be seen walking around normally, and people will judge them for having not having a disability, thinking they haven't when actually they have, and it's a neurological again.
You know, I have 2 brothers that passed away.
Oh, you poor
They
thing.
both, it's okay, but they both, had grand mal seizures
Oh gosh.
the entirety of my life, and the way that I saw people treat them,
Yeah,
the inhumane treatment of people who don't necessarily have a visible disability breaks my heart to this day.
yeah.
We need to stop pretending that we can look at a person and tell everything about them.
You can't. It doesn't matter. That's why I treat everybody the same. I'll be going down the street on my mobility scooter, and I'll smile, and if they're going to smile back, they're going to smile back. But if they don't, they don't. Not a problem. They're worried. They've got their own problems.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like, as we begin to wrap this up, like, one of the things, like, sometimes we talk about problems because we need to establish that the problems exist, right?
Yeah,
In order to actually address problems, we have to know that they exist. But the stereotyping of people who live with disabilities, and quite frankly, y'all, I don't like the term, person with autism. I am autistic, I am queer, it is what it is, okay?
yeah.
Like, those and I live with CPTSD. There's a difference in
Yeah.
those things. Like, for me, it's I prefer to be called autistic. I don't like to be it literally
I
hurts my
mean,
brain when
you
people refer to me as somebody who lives with autism. Like, that's or
that yeah. This is the yeah,
it hurts my brain.
yeah. It drives me nuts. Absolutely nuts. I have cerebral palsy. That is my main condition. Then secondarily, I have endometriosis on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another complete condition
Uh-huh.
on top. And
And
then on top of that, I also have arthritis. And because of the cerebral palsy and the endometriosis, I have clinical depression. And then I also have anxiety, general anxiety disorder
uh-huh.
on top.
Because sometimes we have comorbid conditions that
Hmm.
exist alongside, like like like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like I have CPTSD. My first diagnosis was CPTSD, like legitimate chronic PTSD. I have complex and chronic PTSD, and that is something else. I don't wish it upon anybody,
No.
but that is not something. Maybe I was predisposed to it because of genetics. Who knows? I don't care. It is not a genetic condition. It is
No.
indicative of what was done to me and the traumatic events that
The
I experienced
environment you
in my
were
life.
in growing up.
But
Unfortunate.
but later on, I was diagnosed with hypertension.
Yeah.
There are various members of my relatives, various members of my family that are all diagnosed with hypertension.
Okay.
Very interesting to me. But I digress. Could be genetic, could be not genetic. I don't know. I'm not a genealogist. I don't know all of those things.
I mean,
Later,
medically, it looks as if it could be, but you can't say yes and you can't say no.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
exactly. You could, unless it's, I mean, if
Yeah,
it's possibly a genetically, you're predisposed for it, but you may not get it. You get there's a saying that it runs in the family. So
yeah,
it might be, it
but
might
I don't
not.
know.
Yeah.
And then I was later diagnosed as autistic. And the thing about being diagnosed autistic, it told me a little bit more about myself. It taught me, it allowed me to have the space to explore, like, what resources do I need? And it was the single most helpful diagnosis that I ever received because of that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to being autistic, that is something I was always like that.
Hmm.
It didn't, like, it
That's
didn't just come on.
that is being neurodiverse. And the same
Right.
thing, I mean, but then again, they're saying normal. What is normal? We've
Says
each
a
got different
spider
colour
to the
hair, we've each
fly.
got different colour eyes, we've each got, so what is normal?
What makes somebody normal? What is
Exactly.
and you know what's normal for me could be completely abnormal for you and vice
Yeah,
versa. It may be normal for me to get up and before people talk to me, I have to consume my cup of coffee so my brain can sort itself out. What may not be normal for you is getting up and consuming a cup of coffee so that your brain can sort itself out before people talk to you.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
that's the thing. And it's okay for either one of us to navigate the world that way.
Yes.
But also, if that's what we need, then we also need to have the resources to have that.
Yeah, and
And we deserve that.
a lot of the time, even in America, because I have a long, long time ago, I went to America. Um, some of the pavements were great, sidewalks as you call them, but some weren't. And the same goes
Yeah.
here. And I have to judge things because when I at that point I was walking a lot, and I was thinking, okay, now what the hell is going to happen, say in 10, 20 years' time at that point? I'm going, I could be in a wheelchair. Luckily, at the
Uh-huh.
moment, I'm not. But who knows the next 10 years down the line? I don't know. No one knows what the disability is going to throw at me. Not even the doctors know. Because it depends on my lifestyle, depends on what I want to do. Depending on every atom of the being that you are or I am. So it has to be individualistic, but there has to be accommodation for certain things. For example, pavements, sidewalks, whatever, need to be sorted out so that there is enough space for wheelchairs to drop down. Think about it. You're a mother with a pushchair.
Mm-hmm.
You're walking down the street and you've got a crossover. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you've got traffic lights,
Mm-hmm.
but you may not have a drop down curb. And you've still got to drop the children down in the buggy pushchair
Yeah.
onto the road and lift them back up again on the next
Yeah.
side. And that, depending on what size buggy you've got, what side of, what weight it can be, because buggies alone can be really heavy. When I was
Mm-hmm.
carrying the twins, the buggy I had was 16 kilos alone.
Mm-hmm.
So you think of a child's weight on top of that and the weight
Mm-hmm.
of the car seats. So if the mother's pushing that or pulling that up and down the pavement, what would it be like for a wheelchair? Because they're not just pushing baby weight in a buggy. It's a human. It could be the adult weight.
Uh-huh.
So you've got to think, well, okay, I'm what, over 12 stone in a wheelchair, and a wheelchair weighs roughly about 10 kilos, 5 stone. So
Mm-hmm.
you think, okay, so it's 17 stone. I'm pushing along if I'm doing a push along wheelchair. So you're going to
Yeah.
try and lift yourself up onto a pavement. How are you going to do that?
How are you going to be able to navigate through the world with
Yes,
a world that is very unfriendly to you and very unreceptive and lacks the spaces for people like you to even exist?
yes. So that's where the questions are all coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think, well, you've got to that's what I'm here for. I'm here to say, these are the problems from my point of view as a disabled person. And I'm not seeing it just from my point of view as a person with one particular disability. I can see it from different types of disabilities, because you've got people who've got MS who are in a wheelchair, who are in a scooter, and they're still finding some of the same problems that I have.
Uh-huh.
So traveling, buses aren't always great. Getting on in the car and stuff like that. You just know. Also, how much would a car cost for you guys in America if you have a disability? It's a little bit easier over here because we have a system where they actually you supplement it with a disability allowance, but the cars alone can often be astronomically costing on top,
Mm-hmm.
because the cars aren't geared for a disabled person. They have to alter them for a disabled person.
Because they have to.
So you might not have the hands, but you might be able to use your feet, or you can use it vice
Yeah.
versa. And that costs more money.
Yes. It absolutely does.
And we don't always have the money. We do not have the finance to do it.
Well, how are you supposed to have the money when, first off, like, you might not even be able to have a full-time job?
Exactly.
I will be honest, like, it is hard to have a full-time job and be disabled and live with something like live with a disability like that. It is hard.
So as I'm going back to the spooning energy side of things, you've got to work out what you're doing, when you're doing it, and organising your life around literally everything. Where you're going, what you're doing, when, where, why, what, who, with.
And not only that, your whole life, like, in order for me to have a job, my whole life has to revolve around a job.
Yeah.
And that makes it very difficult at times because my whole life has to revolve around the job. It's like
Mm,
it affects my ability to how I parent. It affects everything I do in life.
exactly.
You, you know, so I think that sometimes we need to just also be gentle with ourselves
Yeah.
to a point. We need to understand that we can't take. I
So,
saw a
you know, it
video the
doesn't
other
matter if
day.
you've got a messy house, you've got a messy house because you've had a rough day. You've had a rough day at work. You can barely function, so you've got to function on what you've got and plan accordingly. This doesn't matter how, what, where, when.
And the other part is not everything. When I saw a video the other day where I was really struck by what this person was talking about because what they were talking about, and I think this was on TikTok, but what this person was talking about is how they're a therapist who is neurodivergent and who primarily treats neurodivergent people and specializes in neurodivergent trauma or something like that. And they were talking about how often we sit there and we take our best day and we measure our goal of productivity with the best day. We always expect ourselves to meet up to that exceptional day, that maybe that day we had a really, really good day.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
then we beat ourselves up if we don't reach that. We
Because
strive to attain
we
the
strive
best
to
we've
be in
ever
normalcy.
had.
We strive to normalcy, and what is normalcy again?
Uh-huh. And I think sometimes we really need to remember, like, my thing to the listeners and the people who can relate to this conversation, what I would like to leave all of you with is that you 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 get to be, you know, sometimes on a day, you get to be somebody who maybe has a day that it is hard and
Yeah,
you don't measure up to your exceptional day all the
yeah,
time. Like, your exceptional day isn't necessarily, is it an attainable goal?
yeah. You've got to make sure that your goals are realistic
Yeah.
for you.
Do you have anything you would say to the listeners and people that relate to this?
Take a day at a time. Take it an hour at a time, a second at a time. Whatever you can do each time, it doesn't matter. Just keep going because you will get there no matter what. It doesn't. You just it. Nothing's a race. You know, it's stay in your own lane. As there's so many books saying, stay in your own lane. Don't focus on other people around you. Don't get on with what you need to do for you. Because if you don't, it won't prove. You know, you no one else can actually show you what you can do. Only you can show you what you can do.
Yep. Thank you, Lizzie. It's been an honor having you as a guest.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you for speaking so openly. And I'd like to thank all of our listeners. And
Absolutely.
as always, everybody who commented, thank you so much for sharing. I'll have to go back and read through the comments because there's quite a few on there. I appreciate you. And thank you to our Patreon subscribers for helping us bring you this. With that being said, I hope y'all have a great and wonderful Sunday.